Excited to have you here. I've got the wonderful Dayna House, who runs Course Design 101 and is the absolute go-to girl for getting your course content out of your head and onto paper. So a little bit of background. We kind of met not that long ago, did we? It was we were talking about I was talking about my course design course, and you were talking about your course design course, and we realized that, hang on a minute, these two almost fit back to back. We're a perfect kind of synergy here. So do you want to just a little bit of an overview of who you are, what you do, and why you do what you do?
Yeah, I love it. So I love this because we both use the word design and we mean it in very different ways, I think, but they're so complementary. So my business is all about helping small businesses, entrepreneurs really create first-class learning experiences. So I use the word course loosely. It's really just all about moving to a one-to-many model from a one-to-one model. So anytime you're serving more people at once, there are certain things you need to consider. Most of my work is in online courses, but I do help people with workshops and group programs, really any kind of opportunity to teach the masses. And when I talk about design, I'm really talking about content design. So how do you structure your course content to make it digestible for your learners and move them towards action? And a huge part of that is visual design, which is why I love the work that you do, because a lot of people overlook that in a lot of ways, and it really, they are equally as important. The information and processes that you're sharing must have the right visual context to meet your learners' needs. So I work with people to get the ideas out of their head and onto the screen or onto paper or onto whatever the appropriate delivery method is, to make sure that people are meeting their goals.
Yeah. So, I did love that when we first, I kind of first saw that you had design in your business name. I was a bit like, hang on a minute, game design. What do you mean? But I love that because I mean, naturally to me, when I say the word design, I think visual and everything on the visual side of things. And then it was when we first had our conversation together, and I was like, wow, yeah, of course. Content design, there's a lot that goes into actually the structure of getting those ideas and all of that information and all that know-how and all of the expertise that you've got inside your mind, how to put that down in a way that is going to make sense to on the one-to-many scale, because it's very different when you work one-to-one and it's something that you're offering that you know a lot about. Taking that and then being able to teach that to a wider audience, there's a lot of detail and a lot of change that's got to go into that process to get it out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I always say the biggest struggle that the people that I work with have is that they are coming from a place of service. They really, really want to help people. And that's why they do their one-on-one work. They can give 100%. When you move to a one-to-many model, it's not possible to give 100% for each participant. So we need to start getting creative about how we're delivering this content so that you're giving them the best possible experience for them to do the work themselves, right? Like we have to take a little bit of a step back. We can't hold hands so much anymore. And it's hard for us because a lot of us are really service driven. So I help people strategize. One of the things I do, I'll say, is help people strategize how to take that step back and still feel comfortable like you're giving them all that you can.
Yeah, no, that's a huge thing. I struggled with that myself, definitely when I first moved over to it. So that's a huge point. Really just kind of I've asked kind of a few questions out there to the people I know and wanted to know, one of the biggest kind of questions that came back is where'd you start? So when you've got your idea and you know that you want to move from one-to-one into one-to-many, because most of the time you've come in from a place actually where you're burning out because you're trying to give too much on that one-to-one. So you know that you want to change your model to a one-to-many. But where'd you start? How do you even get that idea out into a kind of a course or a workshop or a one-to-many program?
Yeah, I love this question because it's really not about the information you have to share. It's really about the action you can inspire. And I think a lot of course creators start by feverishly writing down everything they know. And it's not about that. It's about how do we get people to actually do the work. So when I work with people, whether it be one-on-one or in my group program, the first thing we do is focus on what we need them to do. Like, what actual things do you need to do to reach your goals? And by shifting that focus, we make the information delivery a lot easier, because then we're only going to include the information that will support that action, instead of including all the information we have about a subject, right? So like a perfect example is the work that you do. Like, you are a visual artist, right? I'm going to coin you that now. So you're a visual artist, and you have this real depth of knowledge in graphic design. I'm sure you know, like, color theory and all of this stuff. And it's important work, and it's important in the learning process. But there's so much that you know that I don't need to know as a course creator trying to make my content visually pleasing. I don't need to know that deep level of theory. I just need to know what I need to know to do the work, right? So that's what we focus on first, is really like, what do they need to do? And then what do they need to know to do that?
I love that. No, I love that. Starting with so what do you want them to actually do? Rather than thinking, okay, you need to know all this and know all of that. I mean, for example, you're saying with the design, I've got years and years of design degrees and thousands of pounds and millions of bits of information that you just don't need to know. If I start trying to tell you all of that, you're just going to get overwhelmed completely. Yeah. Totally. And that's not a good place for somebody who's trying to get information out of your course, no matter what you're teaching them. So how do you, coming from that place where I've got all this information, how do I go about figuring out what it is that I want them to do, or what that one thing that they need to do is out of all this information?
That is perfect. You're asking good questions. So really, you need to ask them, right? Like, you need to start digging around and asking. And if you're already in a one-to-one model, and you're starting your transition, the best thing that you can do is really start really paying attention to how you're working with your clients on a one-to-one level, and take notes from a different perspective. So to really start documenting the processes, the things you're asking your one-to-one clients to do, right? Because that will build the foundation for your course. You might need to tweak it, but that you'll start seeing a lot of similarities in things that you're asking your clients to do, right? There will be one-offs. There will be, like, Sally needs to do something that, Tom doesn't necessarily need to do, but you'll start seeing a lot of patterns in your one-on-one work. And I highly recommend that people start documenting those patterns, because that's what's going to start making a good quality course. The other thing you can do is really ask them, put together a nice little survey. I like open-ended questions, because then you get their words and their voice. It helps with your marketing, and it helps you really understand what their frustrations are. So I would just ask questions like, what do you want to do? What's your goal? Like, what do you want to accomplish? And then, like, what's life like now? Right? And then start comparing the two. Like, what are they doing today, and what do they want to be doing, and where's the gaps?
Okay.
How can we start bridging the gaps? So I use this example about, like, weight loss. So if you want to lose 20 pounds, like, let's examine what you're doing today, and then, like, what do you want to be doing tomorrow? And are you eating too much? Are you not exercising enough? Like, and then focus on the things that are different. So yeah, those are really the two. That's really how we kind of figure out the process, like the to-do list of what do you want them to,
Yeah, no, I love that. I think that's really such an overlooked kind of thing. Take it really simply. Just ask people. Just exactly. Don't sit there in a bubble trying to figure it out all for yourself. You can ask.
Just ask. And you know what? There's some people send out these, like, really lengthy surveys. I don't think it has to be that complicated. I think you could just ask a couple of questions and you'll immediately start seeing themes. And you don't really want to ask leading questions. Like, don't put any ideas in their head. Just ask them, like, what are you struggling with today in regards to whatever your area of expertise is? And they'll tell you. And maybe you can help and maybe you can't, but at least you'll know.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, perfect. And
Yeah.
you like that as well, just paying attention to those kind of questions that always come up. So if you're working one-to-one with people at the moment, or even if you're working kind of in a one on a few people within a group environment, there's always going to be a few specific questions that come up all the time. Like with myself, it was always, what color should I have my logo? That question comes up so often. So you go, okay, people are asking me a lot about this. That needs to be included. So looking out for those kind of questions that pop up all the time is a good idea. And do you think just creating some sort of Word document or something very simply like that to collect that information?
Absolutely. I'm like I'm an Excel nerd. So like I put everything in Excel. So that I can get a snapshot at once. I can look and just see, here's the question and here's all the answers that correlate to that question. And yeah, absolutely. Just keep it all in one place and just start documenting what you're telling people to do, or what you're recommending that they do. Be a little nicer about it. And when I say do, it could be just making a decision. I have a lot of people who are like they're coaches of some kind that I work with, and they're like, oh, I can't make this into a course because it's really about self-discovery and it's not about web design where there's like a distinct process. And I always say, I guarantee you, if you start paying attention, you'll start seeing themes where you are telling or you are talking to people about the same things over and over again. Those are the kind of things that you put into the body of your course. Yeah.
Brilliant. Love that. Yeah. So that kind of once you've then started to pull out these core bits of information and you've narrowed down your big wide knowledge base, and you've started to really, I suppose, define some kind of modules or themes that are going to be there. Is there a particular process or a formula or a kind of a way of structuring all that knowledge and that information and so that it flows?
There is. Actually, this is not trying to be like a plug.
But you don't want a big flashing sign that comes up with
This is not a big flashing sign, but there is a process that you can go through to get things organized. I actually have my freemium thing on my website describes the whole process. So there's 9 steps technically, but I've narrowed them down to 8 steps to making sure that your content is in order, and it's making sense. And I didn't originate it. It's called Gagne's 9. What is it? I don't remember the name of it. I'm not the originator of this concept. It's like proven, like in the educational world. So it really starts, they say a lot of times, like, tell them what they need to know, tell them what they're going to learn, then teach them, and then tell them what they've already learned. And that kind of is the crux of it.
Okay.
There's a little bit more to it than that, but that's basically, it's about repetition. It's about focusing on action. I talk a lot about these 4 components to a good course being action, motivation, information, and inspiration. So the action is going to be what they do. The motivation is going to be why they do it. The information is going to be, the facts to support it. So if there's like theories or research or whatever, there's backstory they need to know, that'll be an information, and the information is going to be the stories and examples. So the stories they tell and the examples they provide. So those are really like the 4 components that I make sure are in every lesson.
Okay.
Yeah.
So once you've got your kind of your ideas or your topics or your modules, then that's a process to flow within that content itself.
Yes.
What about when you've got, say, you've narrowed, you've got all this word of knowledge, and you've pulled it down to say like 20 so themes. What is there a magic number of how many like modules you should have? Because you see, there's a lot of 6 weeks and 8 weeks and 12 steps and sevens of the used a lot. is there any actual theory behind that, or is it a bit of a marketing thing?
Yeah, and I love that you asked this question, because there's marketing and there's learning, right? Like there's these two different things. There's a lot of marketing theory, and it basically is almost the exact opposite of learning theory in a lot of ways. So, I mean, it's all about persuading people to do things, right? But it's just about the intention behind it. Marketing to me is about sales and bringing people on board to what I want to provide. And learning is about really changing their behaviors for them, right? To reach their goals. Marketing's about me reaching my goals. I love them both, but they're very different. And I always say, once you've marketed yourself and you've made the sale, you need to switch into a different mode, and that's of service. So you need to stop thinking about what's best for you and start thinking about what's best for your participants. So in terms of length of time, or really any decisions that you're making about your course, there are no real rules. You need to have your content drive the process, and you need to make sure that everything's manageable. So if we try to fit in this like really huge process into a 7 or 8 week program, you're going to completely overwhelm your learners. So, and vice versa. If you take like this little tiny course and you try to spread it out over 8 weeks, they're going to be totally underwhelmed, and you're not going to get the feedback that you need to market your course. It's like this cycle, right? So there are some guidelines about how deep to go that I think are beneficial. So we have like a course, and then you can have units, modules, and lessons. So like go 3 deep. And if you can't fit it into 3 deep, you should start going wide, if that makes sense. So start splitting it out into multiple courses maybe, or you can even take your units and have 1 unit as a course. So there's some guidelines around that, but I would say you could go 3 deep. And when I say 3 deep, I mean you have one action you want people to take, and you say, okay, well, what do they need to do that, right? And you write down everything they need to do that one action, and then you look at each of those things you wrote under it and say, what do they need to do that? And then you write down what they need to do each of those sub, right? And then you go 1 more down. If you have to go again, then you probably need to split it up into multiple courses.
Okay.
I don't know if that made sense at all.
Yeah, no, that does make sense. Yes, yeah, definitely.
So, in terms of length, it's really like whatever your content drives. So I'm in a program right now that's a year long, and it's a great program. I can do whatever they give me every week. I get a lesson a week, and I can do it in a week, and still run my business and still run my family in my house. So I love the program because I feel like I'm keeping up. I'm not overwhelmed, and I'm just keep going. But I've been in programs that are 8 weeks, and I'm like up to my eyes in work, and I can't get it done, and then I quit, and I don't, I'm not seeing progress. So it's really, you kind of just have to go with your gut.
Yeah.
It's hard.
I do think it's a really valid point, because we get so caught up in there being rules that, because everyone out there seems to have an 8 week course, so my course has to be an 8 week course. But it doesn't have to be anything. It has to be what fits you and what fits your customers.
Yeah. And actually, you don't have to have an anything week course. You can actually give them everything at once and let them drive the boat. I mean, unless there's really from a learning perspective, that's probably the best option, because as adults, we want to control our own lives, right? So, and that's why people think that if you drip content, you'll have better engagement and you'll have more completions. And that's not the case all the time, because if you're dripping the wrong amount of content, you're going to have people dropping off because they're moving too fast and they're frustrated because they want to get to the next module and it's not ready yet for them. Or you have people who are dropping off because they're so overwhelmed by the amount of work that has to be done that they just give up. So there's this, so if you really, really want to serve your customers, your participants, you give it to them all at once and you figure out another way to keep them engaged. Just because they have all the content in the front doesn't mean you don't communicate with them on a regular basis.
Yeah, I love that. That's one of the questions I had for, like I was going to say actually, was the difference between time, if you have any opinions on time released versus kind of full content delivery at once, because there does seem there's a lot of courses out there that yourself, I'm sure you've studied a lot of courses to be where we go. And there are loads that are time released, and time release does seem to be quite a kind of trendy thing to have within the kind of course world, delivery world. But I know from my own personal experience, I find that really, really frustrating, because I either want to, you know, if I sign up to a course, most of the time, if I think, right, I'm going to do it today or tomorrow, and I want all that information there, so that I know that's my own personal kind of style. So I suppose, would it be coming from surveying your kind of customers and your audience to see what their learning style is going to be like? Would that be the best way to make that decision?
Yeah, it is. But at the same time, you just sometimes have to make decisions. I think we get caught up in like, what do my customers want? What do my participants want? What does everybody else want? That we lose touch of what we want, right? So I think there's like this fine line between like everybody in the world is different. No two people are going to need the same thing. At some point, you just have to say, I'm just going to do it the way that feels good to me, and put it out there, and the right people are going to be attracted to it. Because in this world of course creation, we are not the only people creating courses on our topics. And if somebody doesn't like the way that I do things, I'm more than happy to have them go someplace else and get the information. I don't have to deal with it. And they don't have to, they get what they need, more importantly, right? So at some point you just have to serve yourself. Yeah. Right? Like at some point you just have to say, this is how I want to run my business and my course, and the right people are going to find me.
Yeah.
And that's
that.
I mean, it's brilliant. It's a hard place to get to sometimes, and I lose track of it. I mean, I try to please everyone all the time, but it's impossible. So then you're just like, okay, I'm just going to do what fits me, and people are going to find me, and they're going to love what I do, because I'm 100% comfortable in what I'm doing. So I'm going to do it really, really well. And then we're going to get really awesome testimonials, and I'm going to make more sales. I'm going to serve more people, and all of that. The same thing holds true with time. I get asked this question all the time. What's the best time to have a Q&A call? Right? Like, we're working in the online world, and I have clients in Australia, and I can't be up in the middle of the night and have energy to serve people. So I have to do it at a time that works for me, record it, give them an opportunity to ask questions beforehand so I can make sure I'm addressing everybody's issues. But at some point, I can't consider everyone else. I have to think of myself, right? Because I have to come to perform. I have to perform at the top level. Otherwise, nobody's getting what they need.
Yeah, no, and definitely exactly that. I mean, it's no good to the people coming onto the Q&A call if you're trying to get up in the middle of the night and you're half asleep.
Exactly. Yeah, or if my kids are home, like, a lot of times people want to work in the evenings, and it's fine for one-on-one work, because I feel like I can say, hey, my kids are here. You might hear screaming in the background. But if it's a big Q&A call and I've got a bunch of people on the phone, I don't want my kids to be screaming in the background. Like, I can't have that's totally unprofessional. So like, you just have to find what works for your life, and do you first, because it's not selfish. It's actually, you're serving people better.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's a good, brilliant answer to that question. So, time released or full delivery of content, what time you do it, when you're releasing it, how long your course is. Just do what feels right for you first, and make a decision and stick with it, and be open and willing and knowing to the fact that there's enough people out there that are going to want the way that you're delivering it. And even if necessarily that might not be the first people you come across, but stick with what you want, and the right people will turn up.
Yes. I know. And it's a hard place to get to. I think a lot of times we want to, we're service driven, right? So we want to help everyone under the sun. And it's not physically possible. And it's not, appropriate. I mean, you become like schizophrenic, like you're trying to just please everyone, and then you lose your mind. And a lot of times, we as course creators, we want to leverage our businesses. We want to serve more people. We want to live a certain lifestyle in a lot of ways. So we have to be in alignment with what we're doing. And the same holds true for delivery. I have a client right now who hates video. She hates it. She hates being on video. She doesn't. So we decided she's not going to do it. And she has a high level program that there's no video in her course. It's all audio driven and PDFs, and people are loving it because she's in alignment. She's in her zone of genius. If she was on video, she'd be cowering and, really uncomfortable, and people would see that, and they would question her authority in the subject. So yeah.
It's from your kind of branding perspective as well, is you're not going to be the best version of you for your business and your course if that doesn't feel comfortable on camera. And that brilliantly leads into the next question, which was, this is great. It's almost like you're reading from the script I've got in front of me. You're going straight through these questions. So what's the best format for delivering your content? So we talked about video and PDFs, but is there a best format?
In an ideal world, if like everybody was totally comfortable with everything, you would have a talking head intro with you on screen introing a lesson that would transition into a really well-designed presentation that is not text on screen, but has some visual elements to, some graphical elements to, kind of emphasize the important points of what you're talking about, and really well designed from an information and a visual perspective, like PDFs, worksheets, handouts, I love to just have a workbook for each lesson. Then people don't have to print a million handouts. They can, if they are a printer, they can print one thing, or they can download one kind of like workbook per lesson. That has some content in it because nobody wants to watch your video twice, and the work that guides them through the process to do the work. So that's what I would recommend.
Yeah, is the ideal. Yeah.
That's the ideal, but it all gets back to like, I don't like being on video. Like I feel very uncomfortable. I don't mind this like interview because you're human, but I don't really feel comfortable like just sitting in front of a camera and talking to myself. It feels very inauthentic to me. I think I'll get there someday. I'm practicing that, but right now it's not what I do. So I actually do live content delivery. I have my boot camp where I invite all the participants onto a live call, and I record the content. And if anybody can't make the call, they'll get the recording of the call. It's the same content, but I feel 1,000 times more comfortable because I'm talking to people and not my dog, right? Like, it makes it a lot easier to have the people involved.
Yeah.
So it really is. I mean, in an ideal world, we're having the video, the video like I described earlier. But if you're not comfortable with it, you have to start somewhere.
Yeah.
Right. Like you have to start somewhere and do what feels good to you.
Yes, and so don't be put off getting your course out there just because you feel like you have to have a video introduction and you're not comfortable with that, or you feel that you have to be delivering things in a particular format. So it's do what you feel comfortable with to get it out there to start with, and then you can there's always revisions, there's always tweaking, there's always relaunching.
Exactly. And that's such a great point, because people like they put all this effort into creating videos and creating all of this content, which is fantastic that they're putting a lot of effort into it. And then, especially in video production, it's like you get feedback that this 5 minutes of the video didn't make any sense to the learners, and you got to record it's like this whole nother production of, so, it's always a process. You're always going to be making revisions. You're always going to be making updates and improvements. And the more flexible you can be about that, and the more understanding you have that it's going to happen. Like, your first shot out is not going to be the last one. You know, like, the first product you make is not going to be the last version of it. The better off you'll be if you could just kind of own that from the start and say, like, I'm going to do the very best I can with what I have now and how I operate today. And there's always an opportunity to make it different.
Yes.
Right? Like, we're not, even though it's the digital world, like, none of this is set in stone. Like, you can upload another video.
Yeah.
Change the link and everything will be fine. Right?
I love that, because we do kind of, so many people get put off by putting their content out there because you get this feeling that it has to be perfect, and then you start going into checking out what other people are doing, and you see all these amazing big courses out there, and you kind of go back further and further into overwhelm of going, oh, but I'm not, you know, I haven't got this big amazing kind of full production course to put out there yet, so I won't put anything out there. And that's kind of that's the worst thing you can do, isn't it? You've got to get started.
You have to get started, and you cannot look at what everyone else is doing. You cannot do it. If you, like, I will look up my competition, which I don't really believe in competition because I'm the only me out there, but I'll look up people who do similar stuff to what I do, even though not really. And first of all, it's great to see that other people are successful doing this. It makes me feel like if they're successful, then I can be successful too, in whatever way that is. And it drives me to do better, but I don't compare myself to them. I don't try to replicate what they've done. I focus on what I can do, what I can bring to the table, and do the best job at that humanly possible. And if it means 5 people sign up for my first course, then it's 5 people. That's 5 more people than I helped yesterday, right? So it's like, and then hopefully if I do it right, those 5 people start talking about me and talking about the course that I'm creating, and you start doing this like buzz about you, and then you become known as an expert, and then you don't even have to talk about yourself anymore, and that's awesome when you get there, because it's exhausting talking about yourself.
I do that. That's a really great point though, with that, just getting it out there. And if you've got 5 people on board when you first start with, then that's you don't have to be selling, you know, to hundreds of people when you first launch your course. If you get 3 people, 4 people, 5 people, 20 people, however many people you've got, focus on those people and deliver the content in the way, and use them even like it's like a trial run when you first launch.
Yeah.
And then you can tweak and change all your content for that. I'm a big fan of doing trial launches for courses where you put it out there to, you know, 20 people or so, or less than that in a group. It's a really great way of being able to refine your content and make sure that you are delivering to the people. So that is a great way to start.
And if you do that, I highly recommend not calling it a beta. Everybody, beta is a totally different thing than what you want to do. Like, if you call it a beta, you're basically saying, I've never done this before. So it's a different mindset for your participants. If they're in a beta, they're helping you, not the other way around.
Yeah.
So,
and people expect that to be free as well, which is one thing. And I've never done a free pre-launch or trial course, because there's a different mindset involved. People take free things on and they don't value when it's free. So you have to get people to pay, even if it doesn't matter what it is that you're charging at that level, whatever you feel comfortable charging at that level. But you've got to get people crossing that barrier of paying you some money for your content.
Yeah, and then people who run betas are always questioning why nobody's finishing them. Yeah. It's like, because they don't have anything invested in this process. You've begged them to come on board to do a free beta, and they haven't invested in themselves to get the work done, really, is what it is. And who knows if they even need to do it. They're doing you a favor. It's not that they're doing themselves any justice. So I don't like the term beta. I think it gives the wrong connotation about your level of expertise and the expectations of the program.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Completely agree. Yeah, 100% agree on that. So coming around then a little bit then about the kind of the technical delivery. We've talked about how you can deliver by using kind of PDFs and workbooks. And there's a difference between the way that you kind of style that information, as we were talking, you mentioned about how that would be if you're doing it as a kind of information that you're getting people to interact with and engage on a teaching kind of basis, and you want them to learn outcomes from it, or what the application of the delivery method is going to be for if you're doing it as a marketing kind of style, those two different types of design. But when it comes to the actual technical delivery and the platforms that you can use, and how to physically get that information out there to people, what are your kind of like top tips on, first of all, getting started? What platforms should you use to really just get started, to get out there? And then in the ideal world, what kind of platforms would you use?
Oh yeah, this is such a great question. There's so many platforms out there, and I think a lot of them you can't really go wrong when it comes to like WordPress plugins, or a lot of them are really good quality. They all have flaws. I mean, there's something missing from every one of them. I don't know why somebody can't do it right. So what I highly recommend that people steer away from, unless there's like some really compelling reason. I would not pay any kind of recurring fee for a membership product, whether it be like an online product that hosts it for you and does all of that. I just feel like if you were to hire a professional to set up your technical stuff, right? Like I call it a virtual classroom. So if you hire a professional to set up your virtual classroom the right way, you will still be saving money over time than if you were to invest in one of these like recurring payment self-hosting things. Mm-hmm. The only time I really recommend that is if somebody has like a non-WordPress website that is not able to also be a membership site. So like I have clients that have Squarespace websites and they don't have membership capability. You can password protect a page, but then everybody gets the same password, which from a security perspective raises some red flags for me.
Yeah.
Because then everybody can just share the password and you can't trace it. You can't really trace like who's logging in from where necessarily. But if you're a Squarespace user, there are good tools that will host your course for you. So there's one called Thinkific, I think it's called .com, and it is a recurring fee, and they take a percentage of your payment. So there's a monthly recurring fee plus a percentage of your payment, but it's super easy to set up and it's pretty clean inside the course, because the visual aspect of your virtual classroom is really important in the learning process. And we need to make sure that it's clean, because any kind of visual distractions is going to lead to an emotional reaction. So we don't want to get people overly excited. We don't want to get people frustrated or confused. So the cleaner the design in the virtual classroom, the better. Not to say you can't brand it, but like let's leave the distractions somewhere else. So there's that website that I really love, that I just started kind of working with a little bit. And then I'm a fan of Optimized Press. I hire someone to set up my Optimized Press websites because there is flexibility in the design of your pages in Optimized Press, and you can make them look different than your website, which is great, and it can be its own kind of entity. There's some downsides to Optimized Press, but I can get over them. And it's inexpensive. I think it's like $99 US for a license, and you get updates for a year. If you want updates beyond the year, you have to pay for it again, but it's $99. So hopefully you're bringing more in from your course.
I just did that actually. I think I got Optimized Press a couple of years ago, and I never updated it a year ago. And then I noticed I had a little update thing a couple of days ago, and I thought, oh, I'll update it. It was like $90 or something. And then all of a sudden, all these new amazing features appeared, and I was like, wow.
It's so exciting when that happens. It is. And it's really, people complain that it's confusing. And there are plenty of resources out there that can set up your optimized press website. And if you're serious about creating courses and continuing to create courses, sometimes you just have to pay somebody else to do the work for you. Yeah. Because it'll save you a lot of time and frustration, and kind of take yourself a little bit more seriously when you're actually investing in your business. So, Optimize Press and then Thinkific, I think right now are my two go-tos, but really there's so many out there. Those are just the ones I like.
Yeah. And it's such a good point you make there with investing in kind of creating your own platform for delivery method, because if you are planning on having this course out there for a long time, and it is actually going to be something that you want to move over into your main business, it's not something you're just creating for as a one-off, which obviously it should be. You should be looking at this as being a long-term investment. Then you want to be able to have full control over that platform. And the problem with using platforms where you pay a monthly subscription to is that you are not in control of that service. So if they decide to change anything, they decide that in a couple of years that they don't want to make any more updates, and that in another year's time, then everything that's on that platform is no longer compatible. You're left in a really tricky place where you could end up having to spend a lot more money in the future taking everything out of that platform and building your own.
Yeah. And there's some to me, there's some credibility in self-hosting. You take yourself, it's like you own it. It's yours. It's an asset of your business, right? Mm-hmm. And I like that. I like taking myself seriously. I think that your mindset has a lot to do with this. And if you play small, you will stay small. Mm-hmm. So I didn't mean it to sound catchy like that, but it kind of did. I like it. This is one of those things, like if you're really serious about changing your business model from one-to-one to one-to-many, it's a wise investment to really set up your online business properly. Mm-hmm. The other thing is that some of these websites that have recurring fees also have some pretty crazy rules about what you can and can't include in your course content. And I don't like rules, especially when it comes to delivering courses, because we have to, it just stunts your creativity. Like, let's stop thinking in the box. Let's stop thinking about what all these big names are doing. Like, let's do what we want. The possibilities are endless. Like, let's create some really innovative, creative learning experiences so that people can get what they really need out of them.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Completely.
Yeah.
Oh. Okay, I was just, I've no idea what the time was then. I was thinking I should really have clocked to the time of how long we've been talking for. We could talk about all of this stuff for ages.
I know. This is so much fun.
Yeah. I think really, without trying to kind of go through we've gone through a lot of points right now, so I don't want to kind of go into too much depth, because like we say, we could talk for hours about all of this. There's so much we can do, and it might be that actually we should maybe kind of hop on a couple more calls and go into a little bit more detail in different areas. Sure. But what do you think then, going through everything we just kind of talked about, what would be your one thing, the one top tip, the one big idea that everyone can do right now, that they don't have to go and invest in any information at all, that they can do today, straight away, to help them go from where they are right now with having an idea for a course, with really starting to put that into some sort of structure for an online course?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing that I think you should do is write down your big goal of the course. What's the one big thing people are going to do differently? Perfect example. My course is about creating first-class courses, right? Like any product I put out there, it's about, I want to teach people how to create a first-class course. That's my big goal. And then I say, okay, how am I going to get them to do that? What do they have to do? What action do they have to take, right? They need to plan, they need to design, they need to implement, and it goes down from there. And so just get it out. What do they need to do? Okay. And then go one step further. They need to plan. What are they planning? How are they planning? What are they going to do to plan? And just do that. And then ask yourself one more time, get that on paper, and go in chronological order, step by step, what they need to do, and they will have an outline at the end of the day. And don't pass judgment and don't second guess yourself. Just get it on paper, walk away, and come back tomorrow to look at it. Because if you start passing judgment as you're doing it, you're gonna that's when overwhelm sets in. So just write it down. Go 3 levels down. What are they gonna do? What are they gonna do? What are they gonna do? Walk away and come back and review it the next day.
Brilliant. Love that. So go and get yourselves a massive piece of paper and some big colouring pens and sit there. I've got it's actually a huge tube of paper that you can kind of get for kind of art pads and stuff, and I used to use that all the time. But as you can now probably see behind me, I painted the wall, so I now have a white wall so I can draw all over, because bits of paper weren't big enough anymore.
I love it. I need to get one of those.
Definitely.
You should see if I wasn't so embarrassed, I would show you my house. There's like Post-it notes everywhere, and then my children get them and they like take them everywhere. But yeah, I think that's really the first step. Stop being so hard on yourself. Just get something out there, and once you start that process, I think things will start flowing.
Brilliant. Perfect. Yeah. I think that is a wonderful, wonderful place to kind of end this call. And thank you so much for kind of coming on and sharing all of that brilliant information with us. I mean, absolutely love what you do. And I love that you kind of, where your course design, what you call design ends, it's where mine starts. And it was just amazing that we connected and are able to help each other this way. So thank you so much.
You're so very welcome.
Brilliant. And I will stop the recording around here,
okay.
and then we can just keep talking anyway.